Right. We are live. Welcome back to Businesses Effing Hard. I'm your host, Kinsey Houston, and I'm so glad you're here tuning in for another episode where we dive into the ups, downs, and everything in between in the world of entrepreneurship. Today, I am joined by two remarkable guests who are here to share their journeys, their challenges, and their hard-earned insights. We have got Mary McLaughlin, owner of Heavenly Pen Riders and Lift Up to Life Coaching. And we also have Jason Peebles, the president and CEO of People Transportation LLC. So I will go ahead and kick things off with Mary. Mary, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the awesome work that you're doing with your businesses?
Sure. I am Mary McLaughlin. I actually had to change the business name. It is Path to Your Promise, LLC. And I was pleased to do that because it kept me out of court. That's one of the joys of entrepreneurship. So that being said, there you go. There's another problem that I just thought of. Anyway, I have been a special education teacher and general education teacher for over 30 years. During that time, I have had tremendous experiences in life that have led me to a place where I was encouraged and decided to launch a life coaching business called Path to Your Promise. And so I'm excited to be able to be here today, and I thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. That's amazing, Mary. It's really inspiring to see how your creativity and coaching has been able to come together to create such a positive impact. So thank you for being here. We're excited. And Jason, I'll turn things over to you. Tell us a little bit about People's Transportation and the work you do as a consultant.
Sure. So I started my business after 20 years in retail automotive. So I ran dealerships across all different brands, Toyota, Honda, Acura, Chevrolet, and finally Ford before I left. And I've moved that over to be a consultant inside of business, automotive. I've helped with mergers and acquisitions in both automotive and the medical and dental fields. So there's been a lot of different pieces to my business. I also run some Turo cars. That's actually where People's Transportation honestly started, but I've utilized it to form my own business and have a consulting business now for just over a year in October. And there's been a lot of challenges, obviously, with that, and look forward to speaking with y'all about those today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Between the worlds of life coaching and transportation and medical consulting, it sounds like we've got a pretty nice mix of insight to unpack today. So let's go ahead and dive into these challenges. As we all know, business is effing hard and no two journeys look the same. So what I'd like to do is unpack some of the challenges that you've both been facing and dig into how you're navigating those. Mary, we'll go ahead and start with you. You mentioned earlier in our podcast prelude when we were talking specifically struggling with high banking fees as a small business owner. So can you tell us a little bit about what's been your experience there and what are you exploring to overcome those obstacles?
We all know that banks are not a public service organization. They're there to make business happen for them and to make money. And so that being said, my experience has been as a small business owner, there's a collision between both worlds. I'm a solopreneur and I don't have a lot of capital to get growing. And the capital that I do have, I want to reserve for growing the business, which does not include paying bank fees in my mind. With that said, when I launched the business, I made a pretty significant deposit into a particular local bank account to keep the funds separated, as we know we need to do. That being said, within a 6-month period, all of my funds were eaten up by bank fees. And I was frustrated, irritated, annoyed, all the things. The other piece to that puzzle for me was that my credit card processing company was tied directly to the bank. And so I have had to pivot away from that particular organization in order to figure out a way to legally, ethically, and all the things, make my accountant happy, my attorney happy in order to do things legitimately. So I'm in the process of revamping a portion of my website in order to get a new payment processing going that's going to cost me a little bit more money, but in the long run, it's going to cost me less money because it is not tied to that bank. Additionally, I have pivoted away from a traditional banking system and into kind of a smaller town situation with a credit union. So that is something for people to look at. The overall fact that fees are so overwhelming is not just a singular piece, right? Within that, we have fees that include service fees. We have fees that include potential overdraft fees, overbalance or underbalance fees. If you need to take a cash out, or if you are check cashing or using cash as a deposit, you can be feed for that. That's my new word that I've created, feed. And, it's just a lot of fees. And I don't feel like that in the economy in which we are living right now, anybody has the extra capital to just say, sure, go pay those fees.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing them, Mary. I know it's a really relatable struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. A, you're not alone in that. And B, I know that our listeners will surely likely relate to your experience. And so before we get into that, Mary, Jason, we'll turn things over to you. You had mentioned earlier your challenging area right now is really more so in client acquisition and helping the right people find and understand your services. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like for you?
Yeah. So one thing that I did early on is I really thought that people were really open to the idea of having a consultant review their ideas or review their issues or struggles. And with human nature and how we operate, a lot of times we're not willing to go in and say, I have this problem and I need some help. And so I found it to be a little bit more difficult in the consulting realm. I do plenty with projects and people who are trying to avoid pitfalls in things when they're investing in a new business or something of that nature. But what I've found is that it's harder to get people to admit that there's a problem, that they just want somebody who's unbiased and unexposed and doesn't have a dog in the fight, basically, to take part in those conversations. And that's what I've done. And I've realized that really referral is probably the number one area where we gain traction as entrepreneurs, because it's just a matter of meeting somebody who says, oh my, I got a friend that does that. And I got a friend that does this. And he was asking me the other day about that same thing, or she was asking me about this special situation. Maybe I can just connect y'all. And what I've really started doing is, in the past 6 months, I've really started taking every call and taking every meeting and just being more open about it and saying, maybe I'll fit with you, maybe I won't, but let's have a short 5 or 10 minute conversation that costs neither one of us anything. And maybe we figure out how we can move forward together. That's been really a huge win for me across the board.
Yeah, that is awesome. And it's such an important challenge, Jason, even outside of your industry, just in the world of entrepreneurship. It really highlights just how important it is to communicate the value of what you offer and having that transparent conversation of, hey, let's meet, let's chat, let's see if this could be beneficial for the both of us. Because finding your audience, it can be tough, especially when your work is in uncharted territory sometimes. Like we said earlier, not knowing what you don't know and having to explain that and find a way to connect. But it sounds like the referral way to go is the best way to go. That's a great way to build your audience and find people with that same like-minded aspects as your current audience as well. And so really what I would like to do is turn the tables a little bit. And now that we've heard both areas of challenges, I think you both have really unique perspectives that could offer some value to one another's areas of challenge right now. Mary, as someone with coaching expertise, what advice could you give to Jason on connecting with clients and communicating his services effectively?
The first thing I like to state is I don't give advice. I share wisdom. Because when you give advice, you do tend to have some backlash. But what has worked for me in the past, we always come back to grassroots marketing. And grassroots marketing looks different within the construct of 5 to 10 years, it changes, right? I started a business back in 2012 that was a franchise purchase, and taking the $300 seed money that I had for marketing, I didn't have an option except to start visiting websites where I could connect live with people, or platforms like Alignable and other platforms like LinkedIn and all the things that we all know and love. Additionally, I just started visiting places that meant a potential connection for me, because that is true grassroots. You go to the places where you can meet the people you may not even think you need to meet. I exited from that original business in 2017, 19, and I'm still getting phone calls from seeds that I planted back in 2012. That speaks a lot to the value of still a paper business card. It doesn't matter what we think is going to trend, but there's a faction of people who don't use the tools that we might use. And we have to keep in mind that the segments of the population that we think we're targeting are true, but we also have to think a little more broad spectrum.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's great. I do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great perspective, Mary. And I appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us.
Nobody wants to get in trouble.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And Jason, let's hear from you next. As someone who works with people in high pressure situations, is there any wisdom that you could offer Mary on navigating financial challenges like high banking fees, or like she mentioned earlier in the prelude, website and IT issues as well?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things about the banking industry and their fee structures and those things that I share with a lot of people when I do budgeting, even that was one big piece that I did even previously before taking this job. I was dealing with a lot of budgeting. It's to take the due diligence on the front end and really just ask all those questions and go into meetings with banks, especially in insurance, with the clear-cut direction of where the pitfalls can be. And a lot of times, one of the largest questions that I ask newer people and when we're dealing with things inside of a business or trying to explore business is, what do you see as the biggest challenges inside of that? And what fees do you see that entrepreneurs get upset with or get fed up with? And what are some of those areas? And just gauge their transparency on that on the front end. If they tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with their bank or their structure or anything else, I would run as fast as I can, because we all have areas where we struggle, especially in business. And there are areas where they can be honest with you and tell you that they charge this fee sometimes if this happens. And I think it's just most important to read those documents and disclosures. We're very trusting individuals most of the time as humans, and sometimes that can bite us. So I do tell people, just be a little bit more diligent in that aspect of it, and take that extra 5 minutes to read through things and then highlight it, take it back, and don't feel afraid to ever go back and ask the question. And one other thing in a competitive business, if you don't ask, I say it's a deal. And
Jason, I don't know if Mary's on the same page with me, but oh no, I was going to say, I think we were starting to lose him right on that cliffhanger of wisdom.
What he said is so true. You have to be willing to ask the questions that you don't even know that you have. So it's important to step aside from trying to project an image of confidence that you think is what confidence looks like, and just truly commit to being yourself, because you are in business for yourself. So it is what he said was exactly spot on. I need you to tell me what other people are saying is the problem. And I see that Jason is back, so I will defer.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I was pretty much done with my argument at that point when it made out.
Oh no, we're missing it again.
Jason, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're cutting out just a little bit. If you want, I would recommend maybe throwing it in the chat. That way, in case we lose you again, that we don't lose that insight. But to piggyback with what Mary was saying, I couldn't agree more with just the importance of authenticity and being yourself. I always tell everyone on my team, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I'm sorry for the people who have made to feel that way. The only way that you can figure things out is by learning and by asking those questions that you don't know the answer to. And so being comfortable enough to say, hey, can we talk about this in a little bit more detail? I'm not really understanding this right here. Spending the extra 5 minutes, you'll walk away so much more confident from that conversation and really be able to have that expertise and help others in the future who might have the same issue.
Yeah, I would 100% wholeheartedly agree with that. Additionally, I will say that having tapped into the small business administrations, they have a cadre of mentors who are people who have been there and done that. And you can go to their organizations, they have local organizations that you can tap into through the SBA and get a mentor who is a person who typically they are retired or recently retired or about to retire. And they are just such a wealth and a fountain of information in every case that I've participated in. And that across the board, the comment that was shared with me was, be yourself, be raw, be vulnerable. And another thing that I think too, and Jason may attest to this, is I really believe that your locale of orientation is what matters when you're setting up a lot of systems. I live in small town America in the Midwest. The locals are very pleasant to deal with and in most cases very honest about sharing their thoughts and their inputs. So the small town attorney, the small town banking system, one particular entity or organization was in a bigger community nearby, didn't pan out for me. Came home, did something a little more local and a little smaller. It's going to work well. So I don't know, Jason, what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that local is always better because it does give you, I try to stay away from the big banks, obviously, because you do feel more like a number at those locations.
And that's where that community aspect ties in. You know, when you do support local, you get that mutual beneficial relationship, even outside of just traditional banking. Having those connections, like Jason said earlier, it can lead to referrals. It can lead to your next area of success, truly. And that's why, man, I love these conversations. Bringing together such different perspectives really can lead to some different creative and actionable ideas for not just us, but for our viewers as well. And it's really inspiring just to see how, as entrepreneurs, we can always learn something from each other.
Yeah. So on that, I would like to, is it okay if I can ask Jason a couple questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Good deal. So Jason, I know that your business probably is driven by referrals, whether they're virtual referrals from emails or conversations you've had with other people that lead to electronic conversation. But my question for you is, in light of your question about getting the referrals and growing our businesses, what do you find to be the best and the worst about the way that your business is set up in terms of communications and developing those relationships for potential clients?
Probably the best method for me, or the best thing that I've found, is just a simple phone call. I think it's a quick text message as an intro most of the time. I think we've reverted as humans now to where text becomes our first method of reaching out, or email. And then it's hey, if you've got 10 or 15 minutes, I think we can just eliminate a lot of the back and forth by getting a quick phone call. We can kind of make a plan or figure out anything that works for each of us. And then I think from the phone call aspect, it's getting that first initial video or FaceTime or something like that where we can do it. Or if I'm local, I'd rather just sit down and have a cup of coffee, honestly, because that seems to be the area where you really, once you're face to face with a human, you get to really have the connection with business.
Yeah. So I think that kicking it old school may just still be the best way. The initial conversation can be, like you said, through text messages. But at the end of the day, I don't know about you, Jason, but I prefer to read body language. I prefer to get a feel for where they're at. And that is a great opportunity when you are in person, or like you said, by FaceTime.
Yeah.
Does the majority of your business come through word of mouth, or is it just you beating the pavement, so to speak?
Most of it is word of mouth and referrals. Typically, that's where it comes from. And then if it's normally somebody saying, "Hey, I've got a friend that's going through this. Do you have 10 minutes to talk to them?" I've gotten a lot through local like B&I groups and just going out and talking to them. A lot of my business and what I do with insurance companies comes from actual body shops that I work with, where I just go in and talk to the appraiser, to the guys who are writing the tickets, and just go with, "Hey, when you have this situation and you need somebody that has this resource, feel free to give out my number. Feel free to give it to anybody." And that's one thing that's very open with me is I tell everybody my number. I've had it for, I guess now probably, I don't even know how many years, but I tell everybody, feel free to give it out to anybody you want. I don't care. You can have it. In fact, if somebody wants to call me, it's 479-871-8511. Mary, you're welcome to call me. Kinsey, anybody.
Thank you so much, Jason. That is awesome. And you're exactly right. I do the same. I've got my business number and contact number, not just on my business card, my emails, my text messages, on my personal cell. Being able to be reachable, not just through social media, but like Mary said, whether it's that FaceTime or being able to set up a quick in-person conversation, taking today's modern technology, and using it to our advantage to still go back to the tried and true face-to-face conversations, making meaningful connections. That's what it's all about, being able to blend the future in with the present as well. And really, guys, with it being 12:24, we are right up around the wrap-up time for today. It's been such an awesome conversation, packed with valuable insights, plenty of wisdom, and a lot of inspiration. Mary and Jason, thank you guys both so much for sharing your stories and advice with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And before we wrap up here, what I'd like to do is give our listeners a sneak peek at what's next for you. Mary, so where can people find you online to connect and learn more about your coaching services?
Thank you for asking. You can find me at pathtoyourpromise.com. And you will see a website that's very much ready to launch or is launched, but there are still some pieces to it that are in development, but I'm fresh and green in the business. So I'm ready to go, but I look forward to connecting with anybody who's ready to grow their own way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary.
My pleasure.
And Jason, how about you? Where can our listeners connect with you to learn more about People's Transportation?
So obviously earlier I gave out my phone number, and you can also find me on all the traditional channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. And my website is www.callpeebles.com. Very simple to remember. And that came from my days in the auto industry. When people had a problem, they would typically just say, "Hey, just call Peebles and he'll hopefully help you have an answer for it." It's all aspects of the business. I can do anything. And if you just want somebody to bounce an idea or have something, steel man an argument, you're welcome to do that as well. So,
love it. Thank you so much, Jason. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you as well for joining us as we have another episode here of Business is Effing Hard coming to a close. With this week, everybody celebrating Thanksgiving, I do want to take a quick moment just to express how grateful we are for each of you for tuning in each week supporting the podcast and sharing your entrepreneurial journeys with us. From all of us at Businesses Effing Hard, Jerowell, Mauricio, Andrea behind the scenes, we wish you guys a safe, joyful, and delicious Thanksgiving filled with your family and your friends and a lot of gratitude. So thank you guys again. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so
Happy
much.
Thanksgiving.
To you all as well.
Bye, guys.
Bye.